woman at the well? John only tells us a little bit about her. We know, of course, that she is a woman. We know that she is a Samaritan. That is both an ethnic and a religious term. Ethnically, it identifies her as a distant, and in the minds of the Jews, a lesser cousin of the Jews who live in Judea to the south and in Galilee to the north. Religiously, she belongs to an Abrahamic faith that differs significantly from the Judaism that Jesus practiced. Samaritans were a minority group living in a land dominated by Jews and really ultimately governed by Rome. In modern terms, we might think of them like the Rohingya in Burma or the Yazidis in Iraq. These are groups that maybe you've heard about in the news. The Samaritans in the first century were not persecuted as severely as these groups, but they're a minority ethnic and religious group living in the land of Palestine, and they're thought of as lesser. Lesser ethnically, lesser religiously. So we know that about this woman. But over the centuries of telling this story, our biblical imaginations have filled in some other aspects of this woman's life. In one reading that I've heard before, that maybe you have too, we imagine that this woman must have a bad reputation. She has to go to the well in the middle of the day, the hottest part of the day, so that she can avoid the stares and the hateful words of the more respectable women in her community. We imagine that this is a story about how Jesus calls out her sinful lifestyle and offers her living water. She is convicted and moved. She repents, converts, is washed clean. I'm not so sure. Have anybody heard that telling of this story before? I see some nods. I think it shows up in like women's Bible study groups and things like that. I'm not so sure it's the best reading of this story. It's certainly not the only way to understand this woman. For one thing, Jesus never mentions anything about her sin. And really, neither does John. I think she plays far too great a role in this story to just be dismissed as a type. You notice how long our scripture reading was? This is the single longest conversation in John's gospel. Far longer than the conversation Jesus had with Nicodemus last week. The one where our favorite Bible verse comes from, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. This conversation, this woman talks to Jesus a lot longer than Nicodemus. We don't do any service to this woman or to the good news that she proclaims if we oversimplify her or silence her. I'd like to see if we can get to know her better. First, her context and the frequent claim that she is a notorious woman, maybe an adulteress or a prostitute. This assumption comes from Jesus' statement that the woman has had 5 husbands, and the man she has now is not her husband. But if there's any moral judgment in Jesus' statement, it's put there by later interpreters, not by Jesus himself. This woman certainly could not have divorced 5 husbands. That wasn't allowed in her time for a woman to divorce her husband. And if she were an adulteress 5 times over, it's pretty unlikely that she would still be alive to talk to Jesus. More than likely, this woman is barren, or a widow, or both. More than likely, 5 husbands have divorced this woman. or have died, leaving her vulnerable and impoverished. On a bad day, she might think of herself as a victim. On a good day, as a survivor. If we spend some time with her, though, we find that there's so much more to this woman than her marital history. She certainly knows how to advocate for herself. When Jesus tells her that he has living water, which you could also translate as running water, she knows that this is a valuable commodity in her desert home. Running water. Walking to a well daily and carrying water home is hard work. A gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. A 5-gallon bucket, 40 pounds. A source of running water, maybe closer to her home, maybe where she doesn't have to drop a 2-gallon bucket up down a hole and pull 16 pounds of water out at a time. "Sir, give me this water," she demands. This woman knows how to get what she needs. She's also wise in matters of religion. After that interchange about her 5 husbands, the woman wonders whether Jesus might be a prophet. She has a long conversation with him about the differences between Judaism and her Samaritan religion. She questions Jesus, and he gives her serious answers. Answers that point back to that conversation he had with the Pharisees in Jerusalem, where he said if they destroyed the temple, he would rebuild it in 3 days. John said he was talking about the temple of his body. He tells her, the day will come when you won't worship on your mountain or our temple. Jesus is having a serious religious conversation with this woman. And when she asserts her faith that the Messiah is coming, who will explain all of these things, Jesus says to her, I am the one who is speaking with you. So this unnamed woman, this ethnic minority, this victim, this survivor, this fighter, she is faithful and curious. And by the end of this story, she will become an evangelist. There is so much more to her story and to her personality, things we can only imagine, things that might even change depending on the tone of voice of the person who reads the story. Is she confident or mild-mannered? She's sassy or scheming or sophisticated? Is she fiercely independent or isolated and lonely? She could be any of these things, or all of them. And this, I think, is where we can connect with this woman, and where we can connect ourselves with Jesus. If we leave this woman as the flat type character that she's often made out to be, we miss the opportunity to connect with her complexity. And we miss the opportunity for Jesus to connect with us in all of our complexity. Like this woman, you have an ethnicity. Maybe you are American, or Cambodian, or Cameroonian, or Brazilian, or some other ethnic group. Maybe you even identify as a more specific ethnicity within those broad categories. But you are more than your ethnicity, right? likes to just be categorized by their ethnic group. Some of you, like this woman, are victims or survivors. Maybe not of divorce and a patriarchal marriage system. Some of genocide, or political turmoil, or sexual assault, or discrimination, or addiction, or cancer, or some other disease. But you are also more than the trauma or hardship that you are overcoming. No one likes to be identified just by what they have suffered, right? Even if they are overcoming that suffering. You, like this woman, have religious convictions, things you believe in. And you, like this woman, live amid people with differing convictions. Lowell is an incredibly diverse community, not just in terms of ethnicity, but in terms of the faith that people practice. And even within the Christian tradition, the different ways that people practice their faith. You have firm beliefs, but you also have questions, hopes, doubts. And you are more than just a collection of religious doctrines. And I couldn't even begin to touch on your personalities. Are you confident or mild-mannered? Sassy or scheming or sophisticated? Fiercely independent or isolated or lonely? When Jesus sits down at Jacob's well and meets this woman, he does not meet a stereotype. He does not meet just a Samaritan. He does not meet just a victim. He does not meet a set of religious beliefs. Jesus meets a human being whom he is eager to engage and connect with in all of her complexity. And that is exactly how Jesus comes to meet you. He does not see you as the stereotype that has been put upon you. He sees your gender, but he welcomes the way that you defy gender expectations. He sees your ethnicity, but he knows there's more to you than your ethnic heritage. He sees the struggles that you have endured, but he does not define you by those struggles. Jesus sees your religious belief, but he also leaves room for your questions and your doubts. Jesus takes in the fullness of your personality, whether that be calm or high-strung, confident or insecure, polite or brazen, silly or serious. Whatever ways all of these things, all of these categories intersect to make you, you, that is what Jesus sees. That is the you that Jesus has come to meet today. So put away all of the categories you use to explain or limit or excuse yourself. Come with your whole self and sit a while by the well with Jesus. Come and tell. Jesus listens. Come and ask. Jesus answers. Come thirsty for living water. Jesus will make you the real, complicated, complex you. Jesus will make Jesus will cause that spring to well up in your own heart. Come with your whole self and sit a while by the well with Jesus until you find his life welling up within you. And then go. Go as the woman did, and let that living water overflow into your families and neighborhoods and towns. Let it flood the banks of your soul and cross the boundaries of gender and race and religion. Let it erode the stereotypes and wash away injustice. And we shall be, in the words of the prophet Isaiah, like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Come with your whole self and sit a while by the well with Jesus. Come with your whole self and sit a while at the well that is Jesus. Come and drink. Amen.
Amen.